Hi, I'm Rita. Welcome or welcome back to my booktube channel, Life Worth Reading. This is the first video of 2021, so Happy New Year to anyone watching. I am still a little behind on my end of the year videos, so I thought that I would just get it over with and talk about my favorite books of 2020. There are not a lot of books on this list because I am very picky with my favorites. But this was my best reading year yet, and I hope that you enjoy this video nonetheless, and I hope we get to read some even more amazing books this year. By the way, these books are in no particular order. I'm gonna leave my absolute favorite to the end of the video, but until then, these are all just equally amazing and just my favorites of 21 in general. I didn't rank them, so yeah. I want to start this video talking about my favorite memoir of 2020, and that is Becoming by Michelle Obama. I have already mentioned this book in my November wrap-up, and that was my second read of the year because this memoir truly was just so incredible. Like I said, I read it 2 times last year, and I couldn't get enough of it, and I couldn't not gush about it even more. If you haven't read this memoir, what the hell are you doing with your life? You need to read this. Michelle Obama is one of the most inspiring women I have ever read about. She is so incredible. What an amazing person that she is, and it really did impact me in a way that I didn't expect. I thought it was so incredible the way that her memoir resonated with me so much, even though we share little to none similar life experiences. Her background is completely different to mine. The time where she grew up and the place, it's totally different to mine. We have nothing in common, and still her struggles and her battles and the way that she pulled ahead in life just resonated with me so much and made me want to be a better woman, a better person, someone more hardworking, someone that fights for what she believes in. And I think that how she managed to do that was just so unbelievable to me. I loved how she didn't let herself be underestimated throughout her entire life. I think that even before this memoir came out, a lot of people underestimated Michelle Obama. A lot of people undervalued her as just the first lady or just as the wife of the president of the United States when Barack was elected. But that is just so not true. Michelle Obama was always her own person, always fought her own battles, always looked out for herself and the interests of her community. And I think that what she did throughout her life and even at the White House was just so inspiring and just so beautiful to watch. How she took a role that is so strange, the First Lady of the United States, which is a role that is always in the public eye. She's always being criticized, she's always there, but she doesn't have many political responsibilities. And I love how she turned that job around and did something for her community and continued to fight for what she believed in and use her role, her fame, her publicity to stand on her own and do something outside of what Barack was doing as president. And I think that is just so incredible, and we don't get to see that a lot. Not a lot of first ladies take that initiative, and I think that it just demonstrated once more what Michelle Obama is capable of, or what she always wanted to do. And I think that this memoir was just one of the most amazing things that I have ever read. I loved it to bits. This will not be my last reread of it. I love everything about it. I love this memoir. You need to read it. If you haven't, what are you doing? Read this memoir. Next up, I want to talk about Cersei by Madeline Miller. Madeline Miller is quickly becoming one of my favorite authors. I love her writing. It's so beautiful, so exquisite, so lyrical without feeling like too much. I do realize that it's probably not for everyone, even though I haven't seen that many negative reviews of her works, but for me, it hits just the right spot. I love her writing, I love her stories, and Cersei was one of the best books that I read this year. This book follows Cersei, who is the daughter of one of the gods, Helios, one of the many daughters, because as we all know, all Greek gods are whores, so she's one of the many daughters that he has. He's the god of the sun and the sky, and I'm actually not sure if they're considered nymphs, their daughters. I don't think that they are, but if they are, or if I'm saying it wrong, I'm very sorry. Basically, Cersei discovers that she carries the power of witchcraft, which is very much forbidden, and so she is banished to live on a deserted island for the rest of her eternal life. She will be mostly alone. There are some nymphs that do come with her, but basically we'll follow her story as she spends all these years alone on this deserted island, and how she crossed paths with a lot of important Greek mythology figures, a lot of heroes, a lot of gods, a lot of just important figures in Greek mythology. It is a very interesting book. It is not for everyone. If you are a person that needs a lot of plot, this is not for you. This is an absolutely character-driven book. So if you need a lot of a structured, heavy action plot, this will not be for you. But this book really did strike a chord with me. I really did enjoy it. But if I'm being completely honest, I don't remember a lot of it, which is strange. Although I really did enjoy this book when I read it, I have to be completely honest, I don't remember a lot of it. And I'm not sure if that's because of my own fault and my own shitty book memory, or if it's the book's fault, because I really don't remember a lot of what happens in this book. I know that I gave it 5 stars when I read it. I remember that I was completely obsessed with it. I read it so fast. I really, really, really loved it, which is why it's on this list. But if you ask me now, like, most of what happened, I only remember like key things, key details, and some more important things that happened, because the rest of the book just completely missed me. Like, I really don't remember it, and I know that I'm not selling this book well. I'm mentioning it in one of my favorite books of 2020, but I'm really not selling it well, and I'm very aware of that. So I'm doing a shitty job describing it, but I know that I loved it when I read it, and I'm definitely due for a reread soon to see if it actually stands by what I said about it when I read it. So yeah, Cersei was one of my favorite books, but I really don't remember it all that well. Okay, the sun decided to completely disappear on me as I'm filming this, so please bear in mind all the lighting changes. I'm sorry about that. The next book that I want to talk about was definitely like the biggest surprise of 2020, and that is Radio Silence by Alice Oseman. I was really surprised that I loved this book as much as I did, because as I mentioned in a couple of videos, YA contemporaries are not usually my thing. They don't usually do it for me. So I was very surprised that I loved it this much, because I really did enjoy it. It wasn't a complete 5-star for me. It was more like 4.5 stars, but I had to include it because if you're like me and you don't really enjoy YA contemporaries, please do give this one a try, because it is so much more incredible than what it seems. I knew that there was a chance that I would enjoy this book because Kat from Paper Bright Dreams is always vouching so hard for it, but I still gotta say that when I went into it, I didn't expect it to like it this much. But it was very good. It was very beautiful. It was very relatable. I think that is a key word. It was very relatable. This book follows Frances, who is a senior in high school, who has always been a high achiever. She has always wanted to make the most out of her studies, out of her career, go to the top universities, and have pretty much the best high-achieving career that she can get. But what she soon finds out is that she has lost herself in the process of studying so hard. She has missed out on all of these other important things when you're young. And I think that that is a message that is very relatable to all of us, even if we're not complete high achievers that want to go to the top university. I think that that message of losing yourself in the prospect of figuring out what you want is something that is very, I think, relatable and very middle ground to all of the teenager experience. I just recently turned 21. I know, I literally look 12. Let's just move on from that. So I've been out of high school for a while now, but I still have no idea what I want to do. I am still completely lost, trying to figure out what I want to do with my life. So I think that reading this, even though that I'm very much out of high school, did struck a chord with me and did make me remember of how lost I used to be and how lost I still am, and how much that can really affect you when you're young. But also it is about figuring out that that is not the most important thing, and that there are a lot of equally important things in your life to discover and to love and to care about than just your future and just your studies and just your career. And I think that it was a really beautiful message that I definitely enjoyed reading, and that I think will be very relatable to a lot of us. Also, it had one of the most beautiful platonic friendships that I've ever seen. I love that there wasn't a romance in this book, because a lot of the times in YA contemporaries, a lot of authors just put a romance that feels very forced and very unnecessary, quite honestly, just to put it in the story. But I love how Alice Oseman really took her time building a friendship between two people with no romantic link. And finally, I really did enjoy that the dialogues and the actual characters didn't feel forced as teenagers, because a lot of older authors try to make teenagers seem like these wise, mature things when we are really not at that age, or try to make the dialogue feel so stilted and reflective of what an adult thinks a teenager is nowadays, instead of like the actual teenage experience. But I feel like the dialogue and the overall personalities of these characters felt very organic and natural, even if they weren't relatable to me personality wise. I thought that they were very natural and organic, and I think that that was very fun to read about, and nothing about it felt really forced. It just flowed very naturally throughout the book, and I really enjoyed that aspect of it. Next up, I want to talk about the Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires by Grady Hendrix. This was probably the most fun book that I read in 2020. This was so just fun and creepy, and just a really good horror to experience. Basically the title explains the whole plot, but Grady Hendrix explained it in the introduction as he wanted to pit his mom against Dracula, and I thought that that was a really fun premise that made for a very light and incredible story. I loved our unlikely group of heroes, our unlikely characters in this horror book. They're all middle-aged, mostly moms, women in a wealthy southern neighborhood, and it was just so different and fresh to other horrors and other protagonists, and I think that their experience really did thrive throughout this book. And I loved how women friendship was depicted in this book, even though that Grady Hendrix is a man. I loved how there was such nuances to it. There was gossip, there was sometimes hate, there was bashing, but they really did come together to fight off this literal evil vampire in their neighborhood. And I thought that that was just so funny to see how they all stuck together and worked so hard to fight off this evil. And yeah, I loved / hated our vampire character. He was so creepy. He was so, like, he really did impact me in a way that I didn't expect, because I think that was what was so creepy about him. It was that he was just a man, if that makes sense. Like the vibes that he just gave were just so off, even when he wasn't doing anything creepy or vampire-like, that it really bothered me, but in a good way. Like, it was supposed to happen, and I'm glad that it did. I do have to say that trigger warnings for rape in this book, and I think drug use, if I remember correctly, there are probably a lot more, but you don't usually see rape in horror books, so I do have to put that trigger warning out there. Also, this had a really nuanced subplot about how lower income neighborhood, or typically Black neighborhoods, do receive less protection and are less safe than their white counterpart and richer neighborhoods. And I thought that that was really interesting to see, because it is something that our main character kind of figures out, is something that she was a little blind to, and that when she does figure it out, it does enrage her in a way that I thought was important. And I thought that that discussion was important, how much Black children in lower income neighborhoods were less safe than her white children in their wealthier neighborhood. But yeah, I thought that that was something that didn't have to be included in the book, but I'm glad that it was. So yeah, most fun book that I read in 2020. Next up, I want to talk about The Vanishing Half by Britt Bennett. I already mentioned this book also in my November wrap-up, so I will not go really that far into what I enjoyed and what I didn't enjoy about this book. but I thought that it was a beautiful book. It explored the hard ordeals of racism and colorism from black and white points of view. So I think that the writing was just what gripped me the most, even though the message is obviously so important. But I will say that upon reflection since that video, I will say that I wish that Brit Bennett really explored some aspect a little bit more. The book was really short for what she tried to do with it and for all the subjects that she tried to cover. And I will say that I wish that she had explored some of them a little more, especially about the colorism, because it makes it seem like there's only colorism in their hometown in Mallard, where only light-skinned people are allowed to live, when that's just not true. And even though that I'm saying this as a white woman to a black author, but I really do wish that we could have seen the impacts of colorism in Los Angeles, the other place where this story is set. I think that would have been really interesting, and I wish that we got to see more of the twins' relationship. I think that everyone has heard about this book so far, but basically it follows two twin sisters, Stella and Destiny, that live in Mallard, which is a town for only light-skinned black people, where black people try their hardest to be white or white passing. And basically the girls run away, but also get separated and live out very different lives, with Destiny marrying a black man and having a dark child, and Stella running off to Los Angeles and marrying a white man. So I wish that we could have seen a little more of their relationship, because I feel like that was a topic that, even though it was the beginning and the main focus of the book, it is something that got a little left behind as we went on. And by the ending, I felt a little incomplete. I felt that that subplot was very incomplete, and I wish that we got to see a lot more of them. But yeah, other than that, I really did enjoy this book. There's also some criticism towards this book that I will not dismissify. People have very different opinions, and that's perfectly okay, and there's some very valid criticism towards this book, but I really did enjoy it. The writing was very beautiful, and I think that everyone should read it because it is such a beautiful story. So yes. And finally, we have arrived to my favorite books. Technically it is a trilogy, but I'm going to talk about one book in specific inside that trilogy, and that is Catching Fire in the Hunger Games trilogy. Are we going to talk about how late I am to this series, because this trilogy came out years ago and I just read it for the first time in 2020. I don't know what's wrong with me, guys. I really don't know, but I am so glad that I finally read this. It was a summer and I was just really bored, and I decided to order the box set for it. This is the only one that I have right now because it is in my other house. But this book, oh my god, this whole trilogy, but this book in particular, Catching Fire in My Eyes, is perfect. There is nothing wrong with it. It is one of the most amazing books that I've ever read. It is one of my favorites ever now. And it was just so... chef's kiss. It was just so perfect to me, in my opinion. But yeah, quite honestly, the whole trilogy was incredible. As all of you already know, I am the only one that's late to the party. But the first book was really incredible. It was so much more... It went so much more in depth than the movie, obviously, so it was very fun to see that, and to see Katniss's thought processes behind the Hunger Games in the arena and the way she acted. I will say she is not my favorite main character ever to read about. I love how flawed she is. I love how she is just a teenage girl that's sometimes dumb and sometimes reckless and sometimes makes mistakes, because I'm really tired of that. She's the strong female protagonist, so she can do no wrong, and she's stronger than everybody else, and she's smarter than everybody else. So I really do appreciate Susan Collins' portrayal of Katniss as this hero that rises to the occasion more often than not, but can also fail and do some stupid things that we may not agree with. Also, I will say Gale can choke. I do not like Gale. I hated the arc that he went through. If he was a character that I tolerated in the first book, and he was barely in the second book, but still, I hated his character arc. I hated the person that he became. I hated the way that his character transformed in the final book, in the Mockingjay book. What the hell was even that? I hated him. He could have disappeared in the first book, that I would have not cared. And I'm very sorry if there are any Team Gale or like Gale stands in my comments, I'm very sorry, but I really don't like him. And I think that the character arc that he goes through is really detestable, but also just reflective of the person that he always was. As you can probably tell, I am Team Peeta. I think that in the first book, he was a little, I'm not gonna say one-dimensional, but he was just a little just soft boy for the sake of being different to the other main interest. I was a really rough bad boy, you know. I think that he was just there to be soft and to just be different and just be the opposite to the other male counterpart. But I think that it really grew across the 3 books, and I loved his character arc. I don't love exactly what happened in the Mockingjay series at the beginning, but I think it was necessary for him, for Suzanne Collins to show us who he truly was and who he has always been. And I think that he became stronger in every book, more loyal to his friends and more loyal to himself, and he never let himself change to something that he was not. And I think that that was very important to see. So I am completely Team Peeta, but I have to say I don't like their ending in the Mockingjay. It felt so rushed. It was so abrupt. What the hell was even that? That was not the ending that I rooted for 3 books. I know a lot of people do agree with me. Mockingjay is not the favorite of the series, obviously, but I don't know. It was worse than I expected. Is that fair to say? Because I read the reviews and I was just like, okay, it's not gonna be everyone's favorite, but usually ends of trilogies get so many mixed reviews that I was like, maybe I'll enjoy it. But what the hell was even that? I was so disappointed. It was so lackluster. It was so abrupt. But yeah, we don't talk about Mockingjay. In my opinion, we don't need to talk about it. For me, it is a duology. We have Hunger Games and we have Catching Fire, which is the most perfect book that I've ever read. So yeah. Not only is this one of the best books that I've ever read, it is one of the best sequels that I've ever read. How did Suzanne Collins come up with a sequel that's better than the first book? That was already so impactful and just so original and imaginative. How did she come up with this? It was just so perfect. In my eyes, Catching Fire can do literally no wrong. I loved learning about the other Hunger Games, the Quarter Quells, how Haymitch survived his Hunger Games. I thought that was very interesting. And I thought that was very interesting, and I love how Suzanne Collins explored that. I will say that Suzanne Collins' writing is not my favorite. I think that the books stand a lot on their own. They're very incredible written books in the way that she came up with this whole universe that was so original when it did come out. One of the first dystopians to really become so popular. So I think that in terms of originality and plot, she's amazing. But her writing, I'll just say, I think it's a little mediocre. I don't really think that highly of it, but I don't really care. Like, the books are so good that her writing not being anything special to me, in my opinion, really did not stand in the way of me loving these books as much as I did. And let's talk about the real star of this book. My love, my soulmate, Finnick Odair. What the hell? Where have I been all these years that I missed out on Finnick? Where have I been? What have I been doing? Finnick is the most unbelievably perfect character that I've ever read. He has the most beautiful arc. To me, he lives happily ever after. I do not care what happens in Mockingjay. I won't say it because even though that I think everybody else has read these books, like, I read them for the first time like in 2020, so I will not be giving any explicit spoilers, but to me, Mockingjay did not happen. If you know what I mean. Mockingjay didn't happen. Finnick is amazing and he deserves everything that's good with the world, and he will get that. And I will make sure that he lives happily ever after. Because I love how Suzanne Collins did explore his character to this bad, sexy boy that's just looks, but there's so much more inside of him, and there's just so much there. I don't know, I love Finnick. And Sam Claflin is Finnick. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? That's all I gotta say. Wow. But yeah, Finnick is the love of my life. Peeta is the second love of my life. I love this trilogy with my whole heart. Catching Fire really is that bitch. I never annotate my books, but Catching Fire really is that bitch. And I love this book to death. And this was my favorite book of 2020. This whole trilogy, but this book in particular. Wow. So amazing. Okay, so we have reached the end of the video. These were my favorite books of 2020. What were your favorite books that you read last year? And what are your reading goals for 2021? Like I said, I know that there are not a lot of books on this list. I am very picky, but I think that my problem was that it was the first year that I read a lot, or at least a lot more than in past years. And I think that I just kind of went with books that everybody else loved and not necessarily things that I would think that I would love. And I think that I'm really going to correct that this year. I think that I will only read books that I think I will actually really enjoy, that are right up my alley, because there's a lot of fantasy that I tried out in 2020 kind of just for the sake of it, just because they were popular, and I ended up either enjoying it or just like being kind of meh about it. So that's why there are not a lot of favorites on this list, but hopefully in 2021 I can fix that, and there will be a lot more favorites at the end of the year. If you haven't already, please do subscribe to my channel, and I'll see you in my next video.